but this station has actually been the home of the Canadian in Winnipeg since 1979, when Via Rail took over all Canada's passenger service for the Canadian Pacific and Canadian National. But prior to that, from 1955 until 1979, the Canadian actually operated out of the Canadian Pacific station at the corner of Higgins and Main. The Canadian Pacific would complete this station in 1904, and it was essentially a more humble version of Waterfront Station in Vancouver, which I covered in episode 1 of this series. And in 1906, CP would complete their first railway hotel on the prairies adjacent to this station, the Royal Alexandra Hotel. And this hotel and station were the same gateway for thousands of immigrants and travelers arriving in Winnipeg in the early 20th century for a new life on the prairies. And in 1955, when the Canadian debuted her daily departures in east and westbound directions, she would arrive here at the back of the station, heading west out of the Winnipeg yards for the Rockies and Banff, down the spiral tunnels into Field, BC, and arriving on the Pacific in Vancouver 2 days later. But December of 1967 saw CP announce the closure of the hotel and would demolish her 4 years later in 1971. And although the adjacent station would continue to host the Canadian for 8 more years until Via Rail was formed in 1978, in the following year in 1979, Via elected to use exclusively CN stations for all their major railway depots, moving service over to today's Winnipeg Union Station. And although the Canadian Pacific Station hasn't seen a passenger train in almost half a century, it still stands today. And what an experience it must have been to arrive here in the great station in summer or for a new life across the prairies, compared to today where the area around it has fallen into complete chaos, further emphasizing the fact that if you build it, they'll come. This was a clip for a full-length show. If you want to watch the full episode of the clip you just saw, click right here, you get the full show, and they go up live every single Sunday. If you want more clips of what you just saw, click right here, you can see the next great hit.